books are? In the door. In the door. Yeah, this is a song that Srila Prabhupada would always sing before every class. It was written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it's a nice little description of Krishna in Vrindavan. Kind of evokes a mood. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Mishnapad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Now, as usual, I need a little help. It's either text 12 or text 13. I think it's 13. I think we read about the sun and the moon. We're on page 604 or 605, but in either case, it's 13, right? Yeah. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 24th day of April, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Dravida Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 15, the Yoga of the Supreme Person. Text 13 on page 605. Gam Avishya Chabhutani Dhariyami Aham Ojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarvaha Somo Bhutva Vasatmakaha Gama Vishachabhutani Dhariyam Yahamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarvah Somo Bhutva Vasatmakaha Gama Vishachabhutani Dhariyam Yahamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarvah Somo Bhutva Vasatmakaha Gama Vishachabhutani Dhariyam Yahamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Somo Bhutva Vasatmakaha. Go ahead. Gama Vishachabhutani Dhariyam Yahamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Somo Bhutva Vasatmakaha Gama Vishachabhutani Dhariyam Yahamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Somo Bhutva Vasatmakaha. You want to try? Gama Vishachabhutani Dhariyam Yahamojasa Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Somo Bhutva Vasatmakaha. Should I go in the back? Or? I think I should. Yeah, let me do it. We have a short intermission. Happens in all the brahmacharis play hooky in the class. That's where we are. Okay. So, word by words. Trying to get in line with this camera here. Okay. Gam, the planets, Abhisha, entering, Cha, also, Bhutani, the living entities, Dhariyami, sustain, Aham, I, Odisa, by my energy, Pushnami, am nourishing, Cha, and Aushadhi, vegetables, Sarva, all, Somaha, the moon, Bhutva, becoming, Rasa Atmakaha, supplying the juice. Krishna says to Arjuna, I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Purport. It is understood that all the planets are floating in the sky, in the air, only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So, due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water. But when the living spark is out of the body and the body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like the straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of the dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets, which are floating in the air, are actually held in the fist of the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving things stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in the air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasatmakaha is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Om Jnana-timarandrasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, in these verses, Krishna is explaining how he's present everywhere, sustaining everything, causing everything to flourish, to get taste. The idea behind these verses is to encourage us to see at every moment how we're dependent on the Lord, and we can see his influence in everything around us. This comes up periodically in the Bhagavad Gita, starting in the 7th chapter, where Krishna talks about the different elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. And when we think about it, those are the building blocks of everything we see. We can't experience anything in this world without interacting with one or more of those elements. It's all a combination. But how it works so wonderfully together, just like this temple. There was a very nice boy here this morning, and Daniel. I never met him before. He was very curious. He wanted to know what the deities were like and everything. And I told him, that this temple, it took 2 years actually to do all the sculpture and the painting and the art and all of these little friezes to prepare this temple so that it's no longer a warehouse, but it's a temple of God. And of course, many living entities were involved in doing that. Whenever you see any evidence of organization, intelligence, my old friend Sariputta, he specialized in information theory. Information theory is a branch of mathematics. He was a PhD in mathematics, very expert. And he used that information theory to write a paper. I think the first thing he ever wrote that was published in ISKCON, proof by information theory that life cannot arise from matter. Now, we just were at a program with another scientist, Judah Karma Prabhu, who was collaborated with Sariputta on some important books they wrote together. And this is a major challenge that we have with the present scientific reductionist view, is that everything has come about, all this wonderful organization of nature, and wherever all of this has come about ultimately by chance. There's no living intelligence behind it. You know, this is the atheistic view. We read in the next chapter. What do we read about? First, a wonderful list of saintly qualities, and then we start getting into the bulk of the chapter, which is about the demonic qualities. And the first thing it says, practically, the second verse describing them is asatyam apatishtam te jagadahu anishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimachit kamahoitikam. This is exactly what the modern scientists say. Asatyam, there's no ultimate truth. Apatishtam te, there's no foundation of everything that we see. Jagadhahu anishwaram. They don't just say, I don't know if there's a God or not. This is the agnostics. Agnostic, which means you don't know. The word gnostic is related to the word jnana, the jnana and agnostic, knowledge. So agnostic is someone who doesn't know. Now the serious agnostics, they declare that no one can know. But at least they say that we don't know. But the atheists say, we know there's no God. And we want to disabuse everyone of that illusion so that they'll get everything right, you know. So that's the very important distinction, because I was agnostic. I didn't know. I think most of us are really, I mean, we don't know we're called agnostics. But everyone is, but it's when you delude yourself so much that you're positive that there's no God behind, and that religion is a bad influence in society. We want to disabuse people of it. Those are the atheists, and therefore they say Jagadahu Anisha. They don't just know. Well, maybe there's a God, maybe not. They declare there is no controller. Ahu Anisha. Then how did everything come about? Exactly. Aparaspara sambhutam. Is that just by chance, meeting of particles over many, many billions and trillions of years, you know, at one point they just came together just right and formed a very rudimentary one-celled organism. You know, then another million years, trillion years goes by, and they come together and form a little more complicated one. It's really absurd when you think about it. But here it's just the opposite. Every angstrom unit, every atom is this divine presence there. Because the atoms are also organized, right? The protons and neutrons, and there's so many other ons going on now that they discovered. It's a tremendous creation. In fact, I remember, it's amazing. One of the publications that Sariputta and Judah Karma both worked on, there was probably others too, called this Origins magazine, which was recently updated by Judah Karma. And you can get it from the BBT. Origins, where did everything come from? Where did life come from? Where did this universe come from? And there they present this, you know, the Vedic view of where the origin is. The origin is Krishna. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. That's the first line of the first verse of the essential 4 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Everything has come from me. I have created everything. Hare Krishna. So what does that mean? How does that happen? Well, that's complicated, and that's explained. You see the picture in the corner there of Mahavishnu, and how it gradually develops over time, and Garbhodaksha Vishnu. But the point is, there's a personality behind it all. We're on page 606, Prabhu. So here Krishna is saying, giving a few examples of how he's sustaining everything. He enters into the planets, and that's why they stay afloat. That's why they're going around so perfectly in orbit, and they don't just fly off into outer space. And he's sustaining them. And Dadiyamaham Odisa by his energy, by his potency. This is Krishna is all powerful. He has many varieties. Prabhupada would quote this verse. Parasya Shaktir Vibhadhaiva Shuyate Swabhavati Jnanabala Kriyacha. Parasya Shaktir means all kinds of transcendental energies. Parasya Shaktir Vibhadhaiva means that all varieties, Shuyate. We hear from the Shrutis, from the Vedas, that God is full of all varieties of energies. And this, we learn from the CC, from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, from the Bhagavatam, other literatures. What are some of those varieties? There's 3 divisions. He has his internal energies. There's a whole world. There's a whole spiritual world, which is the real world. This is the reflection in upside down banyan tree, But in that world, there are varieties of spiritual energies. There's the Ladani Shakti, personified as Srimati Radharani, Krishna's pleasure potency, but she expands into all varieties of gopis and even all the servants, even the coward boys. Ultimately, they come from this Ladani Shakti because they all give pleasure to Krishna. And he has the Samvit Shakti, which is the knowledge potency. Balaram is in charge of that, and that's how he mediates or engages in all these pastimes and things, and the knowledge that the devotees know about him that's coming from that. And then there's the Sandini Shakti, which is all the things, all of the the land and the trees and the forms are all sustained by this Sandini, but it's purely spiritual. It's all conscious. It's not like, this is a perverted reflection of it, dead matter. So those are 3 divisions of his spiritual energies. They have subdivisions, and then there's the Tatastha Shakti. Tata means margin, and sta means situated. Those who are situated on the margin, that's us. We are purely spiritual in nature, with spirit soul. Having a material body is unnatural for us, but we've been doing it for a long time. So this Tatastha Shakti, those are the living entities who are there. The vast majority who would serve him nicely and don't in blissful consciousness forever. But there's a certain number, sometimes it's put as a quarter, who rebel, we have our free will, minute free will, but we have it, just as Krishna has some independent free will. We have a portion of that. And somehow or other we get curious about trying to be Krishna, trying to be the supreme enjoyer, controller, and then we're placed into this world, this relative world. And given a material body, first we start out with Brahma and then we come down. And so, but Krishna stays with us. He's always here in everyone's heart. He's always trying to give us good instruction. We're not listening, till finally one day we do listen, or we're curious, and if we have the right association, then Krishna speaks to us from outside, where we can hear, just as he appears as a deity that we can see and serve. Otherwise we can't see and serve him in his spiritual form. So it's out of his mercy he comes. So similarly, he comes as the spiritual master, as the book, this blessed Bhagavad Gita. He speaks to us. That's the Supersoul. Krishna, and he's giving us good instruction. And if we take it, then we can begin our path out of this dangerous position in the material world. So here he's saying how he enters now into each planet and sustains them. And the wonderful, what is that story about Isaac Newton? Isaac Newton was a pioneer scientist, English scientist. I don't know when he lived, the 19th century sometime, or 18th century. But he made a model of the solar system, with cranks and things, So his friend came in and said, "Oh, this is really amazing. Who made this?" He said, "Oh, I don't know. It just appeared." "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, okay, if I told you I made it, why do you think that this little model, which is so rudimentary, it has to have someone intelligence behind it, but the big one it doesn't?" His friend was an atheist, The real one, that's the original that I made a model of, doesn't have any brain behind it. You see the logic, When we make a car, there's many designers and things, and everything about it, every inch, there's some intelligence that went into it. It's bent just like this, so it works like this. But this incredibly complex natural world, you know, on the micro and the macro level, which is moving so wonderfully, no, there's no intelligence. There can't be, because then we have to talk about God, and we don't allow God in the universe. Yeah, it's stupid. It's really incredible. A child can see that doesn't make any sense. So Krishna is giving a few examples of how he's present on the macro level here. He enters into each planet and they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So this idea that the moon is important for making, you know, vegetables succulent, you don't hear that in the colleges, but it's important. So Krishna, that's out of his mercy. Otherwise, the mashed potatoes wouldn't taste as well if we didn't have the moon. So Krishna is very merciful. All right, shall we move on? More of the same theme. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashitaha Pranapana Samayukta Pachamyannam Chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff. Purport: according to the Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger, and when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes, when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 591, also confirm that the Supreme Lord, or Brahman, is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuff. I am Agnir, Vaishvanaro, Yo Yamantak, Purushe, Yenedam, Annam Pachite. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuffs, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuff, and by his grace we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.27, this is confirmed. Shabdadibhyon tak patishtanat cha. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are four kinds of foodstuffs. Some are drunk, some are chewed, some are licked up, and some are sucked. And he is the digestive force for all of them. So in the previous verse, he's helping to grow the food and make it succulent with the moon. And now when we eat the food, he's helping to digest it. So at every moment, we're dependent on him. You can see that someone who reads the Bhagavad Gita and remembers it can remember the Lord at every moment, even just by his surroundings. Right? Sometimes, you walk through the streets here at Pacific Beach, and you ever see, you see those trees, these huge faux coconut trees, right? I mean, they're not actually coconut trees, but they're decorative. And there's a living entity in there. And if, the poor living entity just standing up there, some powerful wind blows and, blows off all of his, what a life, But who really thinks like that, Well, that's trees, and I'm just a human being, thank God, or how wonderful a decoration. But we're surrounded by that. There's lawn, there's like hundreds of thousands of living entities on every lawn. And to see in every living entity, the soul and the supersoul, they're all in their term. How did this soul get into this body of a tree? Well, some sinful activity. We know the story of Nalakuvara and Manigriva, the two demigod sons of Kuvera. I was just hearing Prabhupada on the tape talk about them. And Kuvera is the treasure of the demigod. So he has unlimited wealth, and these are his sons. So they became like playboys. Like they were just cavorting with the angels in the water, having fun, naked, and they're drinking somaras. So along comes Narada Muni. The ladies are not as drunk. They immediately cover themselves, you know. But Nalakuva and Manigriva, they, you know, didn't cover themselves. So Narada Muni decides to curse them for their own good. And he doesn't curse, it's a blessing curse. So he says, okay, you want to be naked? You can become trees. And I think there's some Puranas say that then they prayed to him, to please mitigate the curse or something. So he said, okay, you're going to have to be trees for thousands of years, but you'll be growing in Vrindavan, which eventually Krishna will appear in, and you'll be liberated then, and you'll be blessed at that point. So there they come, you know, thousands of years they're standing there, and they had the blessing that they could remember. So they're remembering why they're standing there. But then Krishna, when Mother Yashoda binds him in the Damodar Leela, you know, he's a naughty boy, he breaks the pot of yogurt, and then he was running, and he stole some other yogurt, and he fed it to the monkeys, and he was generally being naughty. So Mother Yashoda had a stick, but she saw Krishna was too afraid. She threw it down. You know, she caught him finally. And then apparently this was a standard punishment, to bind him to this grinding mortar. Now, one fellow who used to be here when the temple opened, he visited a few months ago. His name was Pradyumna. And he spent, you know, years here as the treasurer. You know, he's you know, Badrinaran Maharaj. Very much. He used to come and stay with me sometimes. So he came, this was his last visit probably because he got a job in Scotland in the temple there. So he came and he pointed out to me, because he must have noticed this when they first opened the temple, that this painting, I'm looking at it right now, Mother Yashoda is binding Damodar. But next time you look at it, check out, there's no mortar. She's just binding him. They forgot to put the mortar in there. But anyway, it reminds us of the Leela. Yeah. I'm sorry? It's just okay, yeah, right. Get him with the rope and then drag him over. I doubt it. So anyway, he's bound up there in the forest, you know, outside, because she caught him out in the forest, so he's out there a little bit. She went and did some of her duties. And so there's the two Yamalajin trees. They've been waiting for thousands of years for deliverance. So he starts crawling and dragging that heavy mortar. You know, he's so powerful he can do that. So he's crawling, and he crawls between them, and he pulls them down. Makes a huge crash, you know. And all the branches are over. Somehow, by some miracle, by the grace of Hari, he wasn't hurt, you know, when the trees came down. And none of the other boys were hurt either. So it's a big incident. They came out. You know, and all the other boys are watching as these effulgent demigods, you know, offer their prayers to Krishna, and then they go back to Godhead. You know, they go back to the, and then all the residents, you know, they came running, and it's told a little differently. I don't think you were here. The Gopal Champu is a book by Jiva Goswami in which he expands upon the Leela. He tells the same Leela in the Vrindavan. It's all about Vrindavan Leela. And so he adds in this, so what happens there when Nanda comes and he frees his boy, you know, he unties him, says, who did this? Who endangered you in this way? Mother did it, you know. So Nanda, he's kind of upset with him. He takes him back. You know, meanwhile, Yashoda realizes what's happened. She's hiding in the house. She's mortified. You know, she put her kid, Krishna, into danger. She doesn't know that he's God, that he's invincible. So anyway, they come back, and so Krishna, he kind of sees what his father is angry with his mother. You know, so he kind of plays off of that. And so they get there, and the father said, "Well, do you want to see your mother?" No. You know, I'm not gonna play with her anymore. So what are you going to do? You're not going to drink the breast milk? No, I'm going to drink the regular milk from the cows. You know, I'll just play with you, Father. You know. So Nanda sees, oh, this is hard. This is bad because Krishna has developed this, you know, feeling of animosity toward his mother. So what he does is he says, okay, I'm going to beat her with this stick. And finally Krishna says, oh no, because he just so he runs to his mother and they reconcile that way. You know. But anyway. So this is all internal Leela, but the idea is that Krishna, he is there on all these different levels. Just the ordinary doings of the material world. Everyone's in Maya. They're not thinking of God or anything. But he's there at every step, making it possible. He's there as the Supersoul, as we'll read in the next verse, giving intelligence, giving them remembrance, so that you wake up in the morning. Suppose you woke up in the morning and said, "Who am I? What am I supposed to do? Why am I in this bed?" If you don't remember, oh yeah, I got to go to work. This is my name. This is my children. You're finished. That remembrance is coming from Krishna. At every moment, he's giving us. There's a wonderful purport. I didn't have time to find it. Maybe I'll do it. Bring it tomorrow, since we're still on this verse. That at the end of the 3rd chapter, 2nd canto, there's several verses that are like totally memorable, and one of them talks about how one can intuit the presence of the Supersoul just with a little use of the intelligence, and understanding how the intelligence is guiding us, but that intelligence is getting instruction from the Supersoul. Anyway, it's very illuminating purport, and I'll read that. I think I'll bring that tomorrow, and I'll read it because it's completely pertinent to this 15:15, which is a classic verse. This is a very memorable verse. So this chapter is telling us, this portion of the chapter is telling us how Krishna is present everywhere. He's sustaining everything, making our lives livable. The whole planets are staying afloat. Everything is working, and so this illusion that we're independent, we can make our own way. That illusion is what's keeping us bound here. When we understand the presence of the Lord at every moment in our own lives and everywhere else, and that our real function, our real swarup, is to serve the Supreme Lord and be concerned with His happiness and do what's pleasing to Him, then we can have a line toward actually becoming peaceful and happy, even in this crazy material world. Even though we are going to face death and destruction, and everything we treasure is going to be taken away. But if we're not hung up on the physical body and realizing this isn't really us, and we're engaging in devotional service to Krishna, then we can leave this world and leave this body peacefully. Actually, it's possible. So that's what we're working toward: seeing Krishna everywhere and cutting down this banyan tree, this false banyan tree of illusion, at least for our own selves, so we can go back to Godhead. All right, we're going to have time, unless there are any questions, we're going to read chapter 15, verse 15, which is one of the most famous in the whole book. Ready? Sarvasya chaham vriddhi sannivishto mattak smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarvar ahameva vejo Vedanta krid veda vedeva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as the Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from Him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, He is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, He is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of His activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus God is all good, God is all merciful. Antak Pavishta Shasta Jananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for the understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. The Vedic literature confirms this. Yo sao sarvar vedar giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, He is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing Him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedanta Sutra 114 confirms this in the following words, Tat tu samanvayat. One can attain perfection in three stages. By understanding the Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach Him. And at the end, one can attain the Supreme Goal, who is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Well, seminal verse, seminal purport. So, Mattak Smatir Jnanam Apohanangcha. This is such a famous line. From me are coming remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Sometimes that forgetfulness can be a great blessing. PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome or disease. You go through some trauma in life and it stays with you. You can't forget it. Oftentimes you read about these guys who come back from the war, whether the Middle East, somewhere, or Vietnam, and they're hypervigilant, because they were going through the jungles of Vietnam, and they always had to watch out for the Viet Cong or this or that, and they got accustomed to that. So they're just driving down, Grand Avenue. What's that? They can't forget. They can't forget. So forgetfulness can be a great boon. Remembrance, you wake up in the morning, and if you didn't remember who you were, what you're supposed to do, that I'm supposed to go to work, you didn't, it's a disaster. Our whole life is built on a certain set of realities or things that act as realities, and we live in that. This is my wife, this is my child, this is my home, this is what I'm supposed to do, And if you suddenly woke up and you didn't have that, And then Prabhupada would explain how it is like a dream, in one sense, this material life that we build. Because we don't usually live our life thinking about the Supersoul and thinking about Krishna. Ordinary life is that you just go day to day and you have whatever. So that's what this chapter is about, this banyan tree, right? It's upside down, it's a reflection. That the whole thing began with that, explaining how, where is there an upside banyan tree with upside down, with the roots up and the branches down? Oh, okay. Here's a very quiet pond, and on the other side is a big tree, and I see in the reflection there, the top of the tree is down low, and then the top of it, The root of the tree is at the top. So it's a reflection. It means that it's not substantial. It's like it has the quality of a dream. Recently, a friend of mine from Toronto, who sometimes visits here, he wrote me an email. He's quite a scholar, and he said, I found all of these verses in the Bhagavatam. He gave me a list of 3 or 4 that are repeated. And when they repeat a verse, it's like there's 3 or 4 instances of one that's almost identical, but it's the same theme. Tulyami lavenapi naswagam napunabhavan bhagavat sangi sangasya martyanam kamatashasha. Tulyami means equal. Lavenapi, even a moment's association with a Bhagavat Sangi. A Bhagavat Sangi is an associate of the Lord. In other words, a great devotee of the Lord, who even in this world is associated with Krishna at every moment, out of consciousness. So Sangasya means association with an associate of the Lord. Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya. Even a moment of that cannot be equated, should not be equated with Naswargam, life going to the heavenly planets. Bhagavat Sang Tulyama Lavenapi, even in moments of such a sort, Naswargam, going to the heavenly planets, or Apunarbhavam, liberation itself means not coming back. Apunarbhavam. What to speak of some material things on this planet, In other words, why is that? Because that moment's association, and that can come through media, such as this book. When we're reading these books, we're not only associated with Krishna by hearing his words, but with his great devotee, Srila Prabhupada, through the words, the most important form of association. So why is it so valuable? Because that moment's association can plant the seed of interest, of curiosity, of determination to pursue that knowledge more. Otherwise, if you don't get that association directly or through some media, you'll just continue in your dream world, life after life. And human life is rare. The chances are we'll commit some grievous sin in this age and lose the human form of life, and then it will come up. It may take hundreds, thousands of years. So we should know the precious nature of this human life, and we should utilize it in such a way that we get this as much association as possible and take up the process by which we can realize more and more and go back to Godhead. So that's one verse. But another one that I was thinking pertinent to this banyan tree dreamlike, it says, Avidyama, oh God. Now I'm forgetting it. That's what happened. For years I forgot this verse, and now I'm forgetting it again. That's what happens when you get old. Krishna, I'm just reading you from Becoming Knowledge and Remembrance. Something avidyamane pi. Sangsati nanavartate dhyayato vishayan pungsa swapte nartagabo yata. I forget the first word, but the meaning is this: that this world, the sufferings of samsriti, samsara, birth and death, old age and disease. Although this world is like a dream, the sufferings remain real as long as you're meditating on the object of the senses for sense gratification. Dhyayato vishayan pungsa. As long as you vishayan, the object of the senses, then swapna nartagamoyita. Just as if you're having a dream, specifically a nightmare, the miseries don't end until you wake up. So we have to wake up from this daytime dream. It's all like a dream world, because everything is asat. It's always changing. It's like a dream, you can't hold on to it, right? It may be a nice dream, and it's a nightmare, and thank God you don't have to hold on to it. But the point is, it's always changing. So until you, and what feeds it is this effort to try to enjoy the artificial senses separately from Krishna. That's what keeps the dream going, because that we identify with the body. And then we get so many desires that remain unfulfilled, we leave the body, surrounded by the subtle body, the mind and intelligence, which have all those unfulfilled desires, and that's the template for the next body, and then it's going on and on and on for millions of years. And unfortunately, in this age, we perform so many sins, and we're going to lose the human body, go down. Then you don't no more sins. You're just burning off the karma from the other sins. But still, it's going to take time. Postponing it. So use the human form of life to understand all of these things and take advantage of Krishna's instruction. He becomes very favorable. That Supersoul, when he sees, oh, this person really wants to hear about me. And then he's in the heart and he starts cleaning away all the abhadras. Shinbatam Sukata Krishna Punnishabana Kirtana Vidintaksaya Budhani Vidanoti Sudatsatam. That when we hear bona fide vibrations such as Bhagavad Gita as it is, then Krishna in the heart, he starts wiping away all of the unwanted things, the doubts, the lusty desires, all these things that we don't need. And so we become more peaceful, mode of goodness, and we can better cultivate Krishna consciousness. So this is a very important chapter. I think what we're going to do is maybe read this one again tomorrow. Anyway, we'll decide tomorrow. It's such an important verse.
Krishna gives us the remembrance that we did it already.
You mean tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow. He might just give us like the forgetfulness so that we don't.
You don't know which is going to smriti or apohanam.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay. Well, we have time for one little poem. Okay. Jaya 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 Deva Deva Deva. This is from Krishna Karnamrita near the very end. Jaya 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 Deva 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 Chubhavana Mangala Divya Nama Deya. Jaya 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 Deva Krishna Deva Shavanamano Nayanama Tavatara. Oh glory, 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 Lord, oh glory unto Thee, who with Thy holy name bless all three worlds and set them free. Oh glory, glory, glory unto Thee, O Krishna Dev, whose nectar floods our ears and eyes and hearts in endless waves. Hare Krishna. Now let's have a nice kirtan for the Lord. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.